Hello, Fuel Milwaukee. This is Corey Jo Biddle. I'm your executive director, and this is our Tuesday webinar, Rethinking Milwaukee's Large Scale Events. Thank you all so much for being here. Really excited to see you all piling into the room for this conversation. Social distancing, keep your distance, guys. I know you guys want to be all over our speakers because you're so in love with them because their events are what keep us engaged into the Milwaukee region and excited about seeing each other and connecting. And, I'm really looking forward to having this conversation and finding out what is in store for us as event goers this summer, and what each of our panelists have done to keep us all connected, keep their audiences connected during this pandemic, COVID-19. Okay, so before we move on, let me just tell you who we have on the call here before we get this slide, excuse me. If you are not familiar with Zoom, by now most of you probably are, or you've been using different platforms. In your upper right are all of your controls. So feel free to play with that as we're going through the conversation and look at the format. If you like gallery, if you like speaker view, just get comfortable in this space. Also, we have going our Q&A section, which is where you can anonymously ask questions that we can raise to the panelists towards the end of I see people playing with it, people raising their hands. I see you. Go ahead, go ahead. I see you raising your hand. We see you. No, I really want you to get comfortable in this space because we have the Q&A, so that's an anonymous way for you to submit questions that we can field with the panel. But then in the chat room is where you as participants can really connect with each other. And our panelists sometimes jump in the chat room too and have discussions with you and ask questions. Now I will say we have a hard stop right at 3 o'clock. So if you have questions, if you know you're gonna pose a question, just submit it now because we won't have that much time to extend Q&A. So what happens is folks start having questions and then it sparks another question, and sometimes we can go over, but we can't do that today. So please go ahead and start submitting your questions if you have them already and get comfortable, okay? We're all at home here. We're a family. All right, speaking of family, let me get in here and tell you who our panel is. I am so happy today to have this great panel because they do really amazing events, and I think they're going to give us some great insights on what we can look forward to this summer. Jeremy Fouye is the Chief Idea Officer at Milwaukee. Jeremy, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Kara LaFond is the publisher of the Milwaukee Business Journal. Hey, Kara.
Hey, nice to see you.
Kara wins the award for the most beautiful creative background I've ever seen on a webinar.
It's at least creative, right? It's colorful.
The Business Journal should do an event about webinar backgrounds and see.
Right. You'd probably tell everybody to be boring and have a logo back there, but I like my color.
No, it looks awesome. It looks awesome. Samantha Mitchell is the owner and creative director of Samantha Star Events. Hey, Samantha.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And last but certainly not least is Peggy Williams-Smith, the president and CEO of Visit Milwaukee. Hey, Peggy.
Hi, how are you? Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Your background is looking pretty swanky there too.
I've got it set up just right. You just missed my husband taking the exercise ball out of the way.
We look forward to seeing more of him in the hour. Peggy, so I'm going to actually start with you. So look, let's kind of jump into the conversation. So again,
sure.
Folks are here because they know what's going on with events. Everybody wants to know, is summer canceled? Like, what's happening here? And I really wanted to have you on this call because you have a really broad perspective and insight into the world of events, not only those that are homegrown in Milwaukee, but all of the organizers and conventions and organizations that seek out Milwaukee as a place to, to host their large scale conferences and events and annual gatherings. So, for folks who don't know or aren't as familiar with Visit Milwaukee, or even some people kind of know what Visit Milwaukee is generally, but give us a little bit of meat on the bone to what Visit does and what your work looks like and the audiences you serve.
Sure. We're a destination management organization, which is a community asset responsible for programs which promote the community as an attractive travel destination. So really, we're the sales and marketing arm of the city. We do a lot of the branding of the city outside of Milwaukee, as well as make sure that we're bringing large-scale conventions here. And then we do a lot of the press that you see in national publications around the country and the world. We entertain travel writers on a regular, consistent basis. So, that is in a nutshell what we do.
Okay, can you kind of give us a snapshot of what tourism looks like, or the industry, jobs, the economic impact, sort of what does it mean for Milwaukee to be able to have events to drive people visiting us here?
Absolutely. So Milwaukee,
Can you hear me, Peggy?
Tourism is one of the three pillars. Can you hear me? Hello?
I can now. My connection, I think, is a little unstable.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So I will tell you that Wisconsin has three pillars of industry, and tourism is one of those three pillars, along with agriculture and manufacturing. And Milwaukee is the largest contributor to tourism in the state. So our numbers for 2019 just came out. We're going to announce them on our annual meeting this Friday. But we in the Milwaukee, Waukesha, Ozaukee, Washington County area, tourism and travel brought in $5.9 billion in economic impact and supported over 53,000 full-time jobs in those four counties. So travel and tourism is extremely important in the city of Milwaukee, and it has been all but decimated since the beginning of COVID-19. I mean, in my 30-year career in hospitality, I've never seen a hotel close or suspend operations. Right now we have 16 hotels that have suspended operations at this point, and I have not heard from any of them as to when they will open.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. How many events has this, like, what were you expecting in terms of numbers for this summer? Like, I know everybody was looking forward to DNC. There were, several pretty large scale events. How many were planned, and what have you been hearing from some of the major ones? And
well, last year we had over, and just from conventions alone, which is what we book, over 150 conventions. This year we've had 61 total events that Visit Milwaukee was involved in booking that were being held either at the convention center and or our local hotels. 61 have canceled or postponed for an economic impact of over $60 million. And the postponed events doesn't mean that they're going to happen in 2020. They could move out to 2021 and beyond. One of them, which just rebooked last week, is actually moving to 2026. So, the convention calendar, which not just only supports our hotels and our restaurants, it supports everything. It supports, our theaters, our arts, our retail, you name it. The people who come in spend money in our city.
Yeah. So as I share my screen again, and Peggy, will come back to you. Kira, I kind of want to talk to you a little bit about the Business Journal event. So, I mean, obviously you are the premier weekly publication for business news in our region, but you also have a pretty strong presence and brand around events and networking and gathering really influential people together. Kira, can you talk to us a little bit about the kinds of events that the Business Journal does and what that means to your brand and your mission as a paper?
Sure, absolutely. We are a newspaper, but we are a lot more than just the paper that comes out. Although I will say that I'm so proud of our staff for immediately pivoting and working from home and still putting out that newspaper every single solitary Friday from their homes, regardless of whether we're having internet disruptions or whatever. The staff's just been doing a fabulous job. So you should still be getting it every single solitary Friday. But we are more than just a newspaper. You know, if you've been to our events, you've heard me talk about the fact that we are here. The whole reason that the Milwaukee Business Journal exists is to inform, educate, but most importantly, to connect smart, hardworking leaders with other smart, hardworking leaders. Because when that happens, that's when the magic happens. That's when the really cool things happen in our city. You know, when people are super informed, and that happens in our newspaper and on our website and all the email newsletters that you get from us. You get that information, you get the education from listening to and talking with some of our panelists. But that one-on-one connection is really where the business starts to happen and where people really start to make these meaningful, deep relationships. So that has become a very large portion of our business. About a third of our revenue and our business model is based on our events. So that may be the actual event itself with tickets and things like that, or sponsorships, or the ads that go along with promoting, you know, our Women of Influence or 40 Under 40 winners or people like that. So it's a significant, the fact that we aren't doing them currently live in person is a significant financial hit. But I got to tell you, our subscriptions are going through the roof. We've never seen such growth. It's just been amazing.
You know, I was going to ask you about what you've seen in terms of your subscriptions to the paper, the physical paper, but what's happening to your website right now? Like,
unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, our website, our unique visitors and our monthly visitors are just skyrocketing. And, you know, many millions, you know, you mentioned us being in the, and we, you know, obviously I'm really proud of my team and feel like we are the premier business publication. We have more than double, sometimes more than triple some of the other places that you can find any kind of news, let alone business news. And so it's been growing and growing and growing and growing. It's really good. It'll be good for the long run. It doesn't even come close to offsetting the financial hit of the events being postponed. But we'll get through it. You know, we'll get through it. That's what strong, hardworking people do.
That's right. Speaking of postponed events, I had up on the screen, you know, 2 of the popular events that people always look forward to. I mean, who doesn't look for that 40 Under 40 list and Women of Influence, and I mean a bevy of other lists and recognitions that you all do. Tell us, which of the events have you had to postpone or cancel because of the pandemic, and what did you do? What was the pivot? What was the platform? What did you do instead?
Well, everything that we had from the time we had the stay-at-home order until about the middle of July has been at least postponed. And I would say 90% of them are being postponed and will be done this year at some point in some way. We actually have one coming up, our first Power Breakfast. We're hoping that we'll have it partially live and partially virtual. But everything else other than the business of sports is going to happen. The business of sports is not going to happen because that's not happening right now. So we may have to have that one next year. But then we also are still going forward with things. So like Women of Influence, we're going to announce the winners in the next few weeks. We'll have our publication in July, and then the event itself is going to happen in September. And it we'll make sure, just like we do with our information, we'll make sure that wherever people want to work with us and participate with us, they'll be able to. So if you want to come and be a part of the Women of Influence at a safe, socially distanced facility, we'll have that available, where our plans are to have that available. But we're also going to make sure that people can buy virtual tickets and come virtually to experience it as well. It's important that people's grandmas and grandpas and other people with underlying conditions can see these winners be honored. And so we're going to make that available as well. You know, we're trying to come up with the most unique, different things. We're looking into you've probably read in the paper, multiple drive-in theater options. So we're looking into that. We're looking into indoor theater options. We're looking into all kinds of different ways that we can continue to get smart, hardworking people informed, educated, most importantly, connected. And then we're also doing virtual events too. We had all 5 healthcare CEOs on a virtual event a couple of weeks ago, and that was amazing.
Yeah, it's been so interesting to see how creative folks have gotten. And Jeremy, with that as a chief idea officer, I just kind of want to start off with you. I want to talk about your summer events and the large scale events, but I could not have this conversation with you without talking about Milwaukee's Cloud Cafe. Jeremy, you guys were some of the first folks to kind of get out there in front of isolation and clearly had a plan to keep your members connected. Can you talk to us a little bit about the Cloud Cafe?
Yeah, right when this was, a little bit before it was announced, we have a database of a couple hundred program ideas that we've never used. And one of the things that we were, with this being, this whole thing is, comfortably hard, but hardly comfortable type of is kind of the situation we were in. And the goal was to create micro network communities. So not, because what we know, we knew what happened is everybody have large discussions about COVID. But our focus has always been, how do you build belonging and deep connection? So the programs hit different target markets and different people looking to build smaller connection, some bigger conversations, but a lot of like communities, like micro communities. So the Cloud Cafe is a series of programs and voices that just that are different each week. And some programs are around entrepreneurship, small business. Some are around that one. Quarantine Kitchen is with Milwaukee, which is around food in people's houses and chefs. But the one I think is most interesting is this coffee co-working club that we did, which is around facilitated networking and breakout rooms for short periods of time that have deep, meaningful philosophical questions that people can find each other and find new people and find and see old faces. Then the return rate, as you probably know, Corey, well, I mean, you guys do a lot of paid events, but when you have a free event, the return rate is usually less than half. That's in right. person. Yeah. But when we do this event, the return rate's around 90%. Like 80 to 90%. Wow. So it's like you've built something that matters to people to wake up every day and go, and we don't do it every day, but every week to go to. What I've found so interesting about this is, as you probably know, is we've had so many people that probably can never make our events because they happen maybe if they have kids at night or they are they live outside the air. The amount of people that are not from Milwaukee that are coming to the programs each week are fascinating to me, from like Indianapolis, Louisville, all over, and looking to the content here as opposed to looking out, which raises another interesting perspective that I just brought up on a conversation earlier is this the end of localism in a way? Because people can go to any single webinar they want now as more people do them. And it's like with the most interesting content. And I like, even with universities, like I was just talking to someone yesterday, is like, we had a conversation on just before this in the Cloud Cafe, and we were talking about Harvard could have 1 million students now. You could have one college across the nation. And I found that fascinating to see the kind of discussions we want to have on the Cloud Cafe of like challenging traditional thought and what we're doing. So yeah, we pivoted quick. We just got to pilot a bunch of events, and the best thing about these is again, when you do an in-person event, it costs a lot. These don't cost a lot, and if the event fails, it doesn't cost you as much as it costs in person. And people probably don't know, is a lot of events, the margins aren't the best on a lot of in-person events unless you're charging a large ticket price and have a ton of sponsors. And that's not how Milwaukee really makes money. So.
Yeah, I mean, we could have a whole conversation about just this new world of connecting people, because fuel is, I mean, we're, similar to Milwaukee. I mean, all of our events are very centered in Milwaukee and Milwaukeeanism and, being here and what this place means. And we've been able to have speakers and presenters that, are in other places and have it make sense and not seem out of place. So it's really kind of opened up a lot of creativity and, to your point, sort of the a shift away from localism being the most, important thing. It's still important to us, but I think it's really interesting to see what we're able to do. So looking forward, Jeremy, to the future, two of your most highly anticipated events are sort of large outdoor affairs. So I have on the screen here, Night Market and the Urban Island Beach Party. You can talk about any events that you want to, but these events attract over 7,000 people. I think that number is right across the, all the months in the summer. Talk to us a little bit about these events or any ones that you want to talk about and what your plans are for them and what your team's process has been to make decisions about how you're going to do them, when you're going to do them, and what platform you're going to use.
Yeah, the night market is about 20,000 people a night. We do that one 4 times a year. The Urban Island Beach Party, like I said, 7,000 people, roughly around there. And I mean, we're just watching like everybody else is right now. I don't have any other insight to what's going to happen with them. I don't think you can take those events virtual and make the same kind of impact. I mean, the night market is kind of a unique, it's not like an affinity or like an ethnic festival. It's really about everything in Milwaukee coming together. And I don't think you can do that by just doing it online. Yeah, it makes me a little bit nervous of what obviously we're not doing the June one, or we're not doing the July one. Where do we go from there? The good thing about these two events, I mean, besides the Urban Island Beach Party, that doesn't look like it might happen. But besides that, we can pivot or quickly do a night market in about 30 days. We have all the infrastructure. We've done it for the last 7 years. We have the database of all the people to activate it, and we could turn that around quickly. What we have been thinking about is if it gets pushed back, maybe we do a winter one in the 3rd Street Market or some kind of buy local fair type thing, and maybe partitioning out to a fall Harvest Fest night market. So we'll see what we do with it. I feel I'm a little nervous about the online to in-person for these kind of events because we're losing out. Like, I feel like when you're the in-person there's more than like just the event itself. It's like when you're in person, there's that soul, there's that relationship, there's those opportunities, there's that serendipity that happens that stuff doesn't happen online as much. So it's harder to create that experience and have it be transformational, which I feel like the night market is at times. So we're kind of playing it by ear, and if they have to not happen this year, they just don't happen this year, and then we come back even bigger next year to see where the future is.
Yep, and everybody is kind of, I think just waiting to see what happens and kind of understanding. But if you guys do a winter version of it, can you have a snowman building contest and we can all be out there with our masks on, and that would make sense because it would keep us warm. Just we'll talk.
Yeah,
afterwards.
I mean, we've been talking about it. Interesting enough, what's funny about that is that you think that Milwaukee would be this big winter city, but we're just not. Like, there's so many data points of people walking on the street compared to other cities in the winter, and we just don't go out in the winter. So it would be a big risk. We've tried some stuff in the winter before, and it's epically failed outside. But we, can
our
come
winter
back
is
and do
just
something
a special
different.
kind of, but we'll see. We might be evolving. We'll see.
So
we'll see.
Samantha, So I mean,
let me. I'm going to come back to you, Jeremy, because I want to find out about some more logistical stuff on your side. But Samantha, thank you again for joining the conversation. I kind of want to pull you in because you're relatively a new brand in the world of events, but you actually have 2 signature events that are growing and generating a lot of interest. Can you talk to us a little bit? I have on the screen here images from your Milwaukee Fest event and the Battle of the Chefs. So kind of introduce that to folks that may not know about it yet.
Yeah, so MKE Fest is a 1-day annual festival that celebrates diversity in Milwaukee through art, music, culture, in a festival-like setting. You can see live art and mural creation, art exhibits, vendors, music, community art activities, and performances. And the purpose of it is just to really celebrate all of the art and culture that consumes our city through a unique platform. I really like to showcase artists. My events focus on arts, education, and the things that I love. I'm passionate about diversity. I'm passionate about connecting people and building relationships. And so all of that is what consumes MKE Fest. Battle of the Chefs is the same thing. It's a smaller scale event that has a cap on tickets, but that brings together local chefs to come together and celebrate culinary students in Milwaukee. So a portion of the proceeds go to the MPS Foundation for their culinary arts program.
That's awesome. So, right now it seems like I was able to find a lot of pictures and a lot of press. This is really growing for you. And I would imagine you're building momentum every year as you kind of get these events off the ground. And this has had to be like a bucket of cold water.
Yes.
I mean, I can't imagine. How have you, tell us a little bit about this, how this has affected your plans for this year, and what have you been doing to stay connected to your audiences?
Yeah, so specifically for MKE Fest, I've had to quickly think about how can I still give these artists a platform to showcase their work, to showcase the talent that we have in our city. And, MKE Fest, we're still growing. And so I'm bringing in a couple hundred people at that event. So I came up with the idea to turn it into a virtual event right now. So I just launched a virtual art walk series that kicked off this last Saturday in partnership with On Milwaukee. And so what I'll be doing through June at least is showcasing 2 to 3 artists a week. And that can range from visual artists, dancers, DJs, all types of art, which is what you would normally see at MKE Fest. So I had to think really quickly, and I didn't want to lose my momentum for MKE Fest as we're still growing, and especially because last year I had to take a year off. So this was actually my year to bring the event back, and then we got hit with COVID. So I'm like, man, and people were reaching out like, we really is MKE Fest happening this year? And then this happened. So I decided to launch the online platform, which has been getting really, really good feedback so far. And On Milwaukee has partnered with me on the actual event since the beginning. And so doing it through their platform just gives me the opportunity to reach an entirely new network of people to engage and to share the works of these amazing artists.
So if you have a chance, and when we get into the Q&A, if I can, I'm going to pull the link from the virtual art walk and put it in the chat. But Samantha, I can't tell if you are close to your computer or not. If you are, go ahead and put that in there because people are able to click on it.
I sure will.
And go and check that out right away. As we're transitioning over, Peggy, I kind of want to come back to you and get a sense of, I keep having this question around, and I think, Kira, one of the first webinars or like sort of group meetings that we were on, you were talking a little bit about some of the new guidelines and methodologies that folks are having around events and numbers of people. And so Peggy, as sort of this person that works with so many different kinds of events, large scale events, local events, national events, who is the guiding force right now for the event industry in terms of what people should be doing to convene people in a safe way? Is there a science? Is there a rubric? Like what are people going by right now?
There isn't. There's guidelines. I just was looking at an email that just came over to me from the Department of Health and Human Services about events taking place this summer and some guidelines, but there are no hard and fast rules at this point. I'm on task forces with other DMO leaders across the country. And for example, in Atlanta, their first 20,000 person convention is slated to take place the first week of June. So we'll be looking at that to see what happens with that event. I know that there are a few other conventions that are slated to take place. There was one last week in Singapore, and we're still waiting to hear back if there were any increases in number of cases from that particular convention that took place. So, I think that's what's making this so hard, is that there's not a specific guideline in which to follow. And I really don't want there to be, because it depends on where you're holding the event and how big the space is. I don't think anyone should say that there's a blanket limit of 200 people to come to an event if the space is 50,000 square feet. That doesn't make sense to me. I think that what we will have to look at, though, for some of these large outdoor events is specifically if there's still social distancing. That would make it hard to do a large event where you can't control every single human being and where they're standing next to someone. Yeah. And I don't think anyone has a crystal ball to know. I've been looking at some of the chats and some of the questions as to where we will be in the progress of a vaccination, of harnessing the COVID-19 to be able to say what's going to be happening in August. I think that every single seminar I've been on, August is where people are starting to feel safe about travel and about being in larger gatherings again.
Okay. Kira, yeah, as a follow-up, I'd like to hear what your thoughts about guidelines and rubrics and rules.
We've been having discussions about it throughout the company, and some people don't realize this, but Milwaukee Business Journal is part of American City Business Journal's company that runs 44 business journals all over the country. And so we're looking at places like Atlanta that has some, things opening up a little bit earlier than other cities, but we have a publication in Atlanta and events that happen similar to the ones here. So we'll be watching that. And our corporate office will be giving us the final guidelines probably relatively soon. But the things that we're talking about are the things that everybody's been talking about. We probably won't, at least at first, have round tables where everybody's facing each other, and eating. We probably won't have, we tended not to have buffets anyway, but we probably won't have any buffets. If we do have a seated meal, probably we'll have it set ahead of time so that we don't have waiters and waitresses having to interact with the people. We'll probably sit classroom style versus in rounds. Those are the kinds of things. We'll limit the number of people that can come in, and that's going to be a balancing act between us and the venues and what they're going to be allowing versus what we feel comfortable with. And we're going to be relying on them a lot of times too to make sure that in addition to what we can bring, that they have the hand sanitizers and all the things that are necessary, that there's some kind of a control of the elevators and stairs that people can walk if they need to walk, and all of those kinds of things that everybody's been talking about. And then also making these available so that the people who are either have compromised positions or are older or simply just don't feel comfortable, that they have a way to engage with us, even if they just aren't ready to come and be a part of it yet. So we're ready to go when and in a way that it is healthy and safe to do it, and to that degree. We'll be working our way through this for the next year or more. And I hear Jeremy when he talks about, is this the end of local? It's not the end of local. Not by a long shot. Yes, we can meet people across markets, but those relationships and the people that we know face to face, that's where the magic portion of it happens. So it's, that's the magic of the business rules.
I understand your point there, but I mean, I've been on webinars from all over the world that I can't get that content local, and
absolutely,
it's totally changed the way I'm interacting with local, which obviously we create community events, not saying that that's going away, but now our competition isn't another event happening at the same time. Our competition is, like, I was on a neuromarketing conference. Those aren't happening in Milwaukee. That was based in Amsterdam, and it was super fascinating. And so that then allowed me that stopped me from going to a bunch of other content. So the content is going to have to maybe be more interesting if it's just online, because that we do crave that in-person connection, using our senses, feeling like we're around the energy and that like experience around you. when we go to these in-person events, it's kind of not the same yet in a lot of the programs.
Yeah, content and connections are both equally important.
Yeah.
And local's going to be just strong too. I agree. There's all kinds of good stuff you can see worldwide, but it's not going to replace local.
But I also think too, right now, there's a difference. Everyone is sitting at home. There is nothing else to do because you are sitting at home. There's no commuting. So when we look at what these online events are doing, don't get me wrong. I do think that most events are going to have a virtual component moving forward so that you can open it up beyond where you are currently. But I also do, as I speak to people, right now it's different because we are all being forced to stay home, sit at our computer, and there's nothing in between. We're not running from meeting to meeting because every meeting is taking place in front of you. So you have more time to do that and to look up these other events. And right now people are offering a lot of this stuff for free because they want to engage you. That's going to stop, and there's going to be costs associated with those things as well. So I think when we look at what that looks like moving forward, it's going to look different than it looks right now in the heat of the pandemic.
Yeah, and I also think, Peggy, one of the things that I think will be interesting is as things loosen up and as people start getting out a little bit more, I think people are going to start exploring their own cities and their own local opportunities to a degree that they've never done before, because they kind of took it for granted. But there's so many cool things and places you can see and do right here in our city and our state that I think you're going to see a resurgence of that too.
I do.
I'm wondering too, Samantha, and this is I'm curious of, what all of you guys think about this, but as we talk about the future of events and how this virtual blast has really had, I think, for a forever impact on the way that we're going to design our events and whether or not we're going to have some sort of virtual component going forward. I'll start with you, Samantha, but how do you foresee this experience changing the way that you design events going forward? And I mean, and we introduced you as Samantha Starr, but also in your work with United Way, it's going to be so important that our content is meaningful and valuable and able to, grasp people's attention going forward. Yeah. How do you think that plays out for you in the future?
So it's interesting because my Battle of the Chefs event is a dining event. And I was planning to introduce a new dining event this May, actually. And so that really makes me think, like, how do these restaurant and dining events look moving forward with the risk associated with COVID? And Battle of the Chefs, this would be my 5th year holding that event at the Chef's Table in Walker's Point, which is a very, it's a smaller venue with an intimate setting. And so the event is reception style, cocktail style. So there's a lot of movement and, you're seeing the chefs actually cook the food. And I'm still trying to figure out what this is going to look like moving forward. And I'm not quite there yet, but I'm hopeful that that's an event that I can continue to have. United Way, man, we have adapted so quickly to the virtual setting as everyone else has too. And we've hosted volunteer activities virtually. We've hosted a town hall for our leadership donors, and we recently held our first campaign cabinet meeting virtually as well. And I think it's just, we're positioned to make those changes very quickly. And, moving forward, I think we're going with the flow of everyone else in the community and our corporate partners as well, who are making a lot of their events and meetings virtual as well. So, I think everyone's trying to feel out what things look like, what things might look like in the fall. And so, there's a lot of discussions about virtual events for our campaign this year. So we'll see what happens, but it's definitely more virtual things going to happen.
Jeremy, there was a question. I'm going to go to the chat now because we have quite a few questions in the Q&A and in the chat, and I received some pre-questions before. So I think we'll transition into that too. And, you know, I don't want to put you guys to work, but if you wouldn't mind going into the chat and Q&A, and if you see anything interesting or that you would, you know, like to take on as a question, please dive right in. Jeremy, I'm going to start with you because there's a question in there about someone wants to know how you believe that other people outside of Milwaukee got a hold of the Milwaukee Cloud Cafe so that they can start attending those events.
Yeah, I mean, you know, a lot of it was from our database. A lot of it was of creating content that isn't Milwaukee focused. You know, we do an urbanism podcast called Urban Spaceship. It's about cities. And, you know, so when you have guests on from other cities, they promote it and they have guests that come on the program. When we do stuff about Milwaukee, there's people that might have also lived here that moved on and have networks. So they promote, you know, so it is about tapping into the guests network sometimes, but, you know, a lot of it's been through our database and through our social media, which grows beyond Wisconsin. But if the show is about Milwaukee, generally you're only going to have people come on about Milwaukee, which we have a few shows like that on the Cloud Cafe. So just so people can understand the Cloud Cafe, it's kind of like a radio station. There's a lot of different programs that hit a lot of different target markets of people that, you know, that help them find connection. We say people, passion, purpose, and find out about place. And so those 4 different focus areas are how we create the programs, and how do we get outside of it is by the guests and the programs themselves and what we're trying to accomplish by doing that program, what the purpose is of the program.
That's awesome. That's great. Does anybody see a question that they want to tackle or that they want to raise to the panel?
Sure. You know, I mean, I think it's going to be super important moving forward to form personal connections. I'm seeing a lot of things where people are going to be allowed to work from home because this opportunity has shown that you can do a lot more people working remote, which can save you on overhead costs in many different ways. And that's just going to make meetings and being together in person even more important. So like I said, I see one of these questions here, the pros and cons of trying to virtualize a social event. Some of them do really well. Right now, with 165 people on this call, we haven't had very many glitches. I've watched some pretty important social or some pretty important charitable events happen where the speaker's camera freezes and you can't get across the point you need to, where that would never happen in an event and a gala or a in-person time together. And you also can't have side conversations. Right now, if I wanted to challenge Kira on something she said, or Jeremy, if we were at an event, we could move off to the side. I could say, Samantha, I don't agree. It's not the same being able to do it in this type of format. So, you know, even though right now, this is what we have to do, this is not what we have to do moving forward. And, you know, when I look at what our job is to brand and market the city, to bring people in to experience the city, while also hearing from speakers all over the world, because that's what a convention does, they need those trade show moments in order to be able to support their organizations. And those, what we're finding, I'm talking to a lot of industry experts, there is no way to do an online convention that makes it worth the while of that association to be able to continue or to raise the funds they need to keep their association in business.
Yeah, Peggy, I think too, the what your point there too, like when I go to a conference, sometimes it's about the content, and you know, you go to a couple sessions, but it really is happy hours in the hallways,
right?
Of where all that, what we always call deliberate serendipity. Where you can be deliberate and purposeful about where you're going to be, and then serendipitous moment happens. That's what a conference does to you. And the only thing that in a relation has been really messing with breakout rooms on Zoom to give a little bit of that, of what we've been doing, and then creating, you know how when a speaker speaks and then there's a line that queues up? On some of our programs, we've been creating virtual lines where you can go in with a speaker in a different room for 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, and it's timed, and it kicks you out, and then the next person goes in. But it's just not the same. You can't, like conferences, sometimes the food, you smell the food. The thing, I see a lot of questions, if you guys don't mind me answering them, around like, what are we going to do around big events and who's responsible and stuff like that. Right now at the city level, we're unable to get a permit to do anything coming out of it, a permit to close down any streets. And that's what we've been told for something like the night markets. Whose responsibility is it? It's going to fall on, that's the big question. Is it going to be our fault if someone catches this? I think people have, we're not going to do anything until they let people, it's okay to have everybody out in public again in large groups, because the simple fact is we have a false sense of security right now. A lot of people are catching COVID through their eyes. No one's wearing goggles. So there's a lot of different ways people are, and I think we just have this thing where everybody's in a restaurant, you're not going to get it. People cross-contaminate. I mean, if you ever did the UV or the black light thing, people cross-contaminate so much stuff on their steering wheels, even if they're careful. So if we're going to get 1,000 people or 500 people together, you're going to catch it. So we're going to either have to get comfortable with that happening to do these programs, or they're not going to happen. And that's until we get a vaccine, which could never happen. So really is we have to get used to it, kind of.
And I will tell you that when you look at who's responsible, we're compiling a list from all of the different entities, right? Restaurants, this is not new to them. They've been telling you to wash your hands for 20 seconds since they've been in business. They are inspected twice a year by the health inspector to make sure that they're safely handling food. Now, is there going to be some cross-contamination, like you said? Absolutely. But restaurants are well positioned to be able to come out of this safely and be able to handle it. My bigger fear is that when they do come out of it, having run restaurants for a good portion of my latter part of my career, margins are small in restaurants. And if we open and say that they can only have 25% occupancy, they do most of their business on weekends where they flip a restaurant 3 times, they're not going to be able to make it on only being allowed to have 25% occupancy on a Friday and Saturday night. And because no one's going to, not everyone's going to come and fill them on a Monday and a Tuesday. So those are things that really make me nervous. But I believe, there are different organizations, different associations that are putting out guidelines that will help give people ways that they can reopen safely. And you're seeing those everywhere. The Wisconsin Restaurant Association, the National Restaurant Association, the Event Professionals Association, they're all putting out guidelines that will help you to come up with ways that you can open safely. And to what Kira said earlier, I think buffets will be a thing of the past for quite some time. I don't know when we're going to be able to see a buffet anywhere in the near future because of cross-contamination.
Events get more premium. They don't have any food or all those freebie things at them that usually have. They get more expensive for the host and the guest because it's going to cost more.
To that point, Jeremy, there's a question here that kind of it's got me thinking here. The question is, in the short term, do you view events becoming a premium experience in terms of the space? So, the in-person experience is the premium experience, and then maybe there's a lesser tier or ticket price that's a virtual. I mean, we could go down the rabbit hole thinking about that. Have any of you thought about sort of a tiered approach to bringing your folks back together?
I'll talk to you about and again, everybody in the audience, don't hold me to this because we're building it as we go, and we haven't been approved to even have these yet. So, but let's consider Women of Influence, which is normally about 1,000 people, all in the ballroom at the Wisconsin Center. So let's consider that. Let's consider that we're not going to be able to have any more than 25% of those people in that space at that time in September. We absolutely want the winners to be there. We want the winners' families and closest friends to be there. So that likely will have a ticket price that, and quite frankly, we don't make a lot of money on the actual event itself. So that's, coming up, it's not going to be $300 to go to that event. But that ticket price for the in-person event will help us cover the food and the costs and the things that go along with having that event. but we'll also allow people to purchase virtual tickets. And if let's say Corey Joe, you're a woman of influence this year, and if the MMAC wanted to buy you because they don't want to be responsible for somebody coming to the event, they might buy you a virtual table and an ad to promote you and those kinds of things. So, but that'll be a lower cost because that doesn't come out, although I'm learning there are a lot of costs coming that come along with having the videographers there and everything. But that'll be a smaller cost because there won't be the major food and beverage, and it'll be a different experience, a whole different thing. And then maybe we open it up to all the subscribers after 2 or 3 weeks so that everybody can watch it and view it, after a certain period of time. So tiered things, I think, are definitely going to be a part of this whole thing.
Kira, that made me just think about something. And Samantha, I'll kick off with you because it was really based on the conversation that you and I had yesterday. Tiered ticket prices, and then thinking about the sponsorships. Like right now, it's really kind of hard to, there's a challenge in, soliciting sponsorship because people don't want to be insensitive for the industries that are struggling right now. But as we all sort of come out of this, our sponsorship tiers might look different. Like there might be a, camera crew sponsor going forward. I mean, it's just going to evolve and change. Samantha, what has the experience been like for you? Because I know your events are very dependent on the loyal sponsors that you've had that have helped you kind of get this off the ground. What has this been like for you right now?
Right now, it's a balance of me making a decision to be sensitive to the situations that we're facing right now, and being considerate of where people are actually directing their funds for the remainder of the year. And so my events especially are very dependent on sponsorships. Since I've taken MKE Fest virtual this year, it's not a huge issue, but for Battle of the Chefs, that's something that I'm currently thinking about. What does my sponsorship package, what does my ask look like now, if I can even still have that event, which, it's a dining intimate event, and we know how this virus spreads in the restaurants and in bars. So, this is something that might likely need to be postponed until next year anyway. But definitely taking that into consideration. And so I haven't gotten to that point where I'm full on soliciting sponsors for Battle of the Chefs yet. But when I get there, if I'm able to hold the event, I'm definitely rethinking my sponsorship package. What do my levels look like? What's an appropriate amount to ask for during this time? So I'm just weighing all of those things as I'm thinking it through.
Jeremy, there was a question posed to me, and I'm going to share the question with you. Peggy, your name is on this one too. Let me see. I lost it. There's so many of them. But the question was essentially, how are we going to position Milwaukee as a place to visit for tourism? Peggy, that's for you. And Jeremy, you can think about this piece with me for talent. Has this opened up an opportunity for us to recruit talent differently and use virtual platform to kind of help people fall in love with Milwaukee? Jeremy, you start first, and then Peggy, we'll go over to you.
It's been interesting. So what people probably don't know is we build a lot of programs for companies to attract people to the city. And then when they're here, we build programs. What's been really interesting is all the pivots from the companies and all the programs we're building virtually to connect people to place. It's blown up. The virtual creation of content to make people feel like they belong in the city is an avenue that I'd never would have been thinking about, when we could have, because my whole goal was to get them here in person to have that experience. Right. So we've been building stuff for a lot of the companies here, for all of their interns, for other people that are outside the city to move here. It's been crazy busy around that kind of content. So I think the future is that. Even tourism, I was talking to Peggy a while back, is a really cool way to do this would be to try to sponsor as a city certain conferences and have the background drop be Milwaukee, like, and hopefully that brand image and repetitive brand image allows people to think of the city that maybe they'll go to in the future. So we're going to have to get more creative around the marketing aspects and the branding aspects. But from a talent play, people aren't going to have to move. I mean, right now, people think people move all the time. It's only 6% of the population that moves, which is down from like 8% a couple years ago. And also more or less people going to college could happen in the future. So how do we get people to stay and even come to our colleges is going to be interesting. And so we're doing some work with the state around that right now. So there's a lot of things to think about. I think the future of talent attraction to a place, when we thought it was going to be at the place, as seems to be a lot about cost of living now. And like, well, if I'm going to work anywhere, I might as well go to a city that's cheaper. So that's an advantage for us. And I'm seeing some of that chatter, but it's, I haven't seen it in any of the actual data yet.
Peggy, your thoughts?
Well, I think that Milwaukee is well positioned to come out of there. They're saying that people are going to be nervous about getting on a plane for quite some time. So they're kind of branding this as the year of the car right now. Obviously, we want air flight to deplanements to start happening again. But I just heard a note that at one point, there were 2.5 million flights per day. The lowest we got in the United States, we got to as low as 100,000. And this past week, we were back up to 250,000. So that shows you that it is increasing, even though that number is still pretty scary. But Milwaukee is located conveniently within a day's drive of 1/3 of the population, which gives us the perfect opportunity for us to market to those leisure people who, travel. The need to travel is inherent. People will want to get out of the house. So we're going to use that to our advantage. We are going to start marketing when it's safe and appropriate to do so. So starting to come a little bit out right now about what a great place Milwaukee is. We have acres of beachfront. We have bike trails. We have, everything that you would need to have a great vacation while allowing you to maintain a physical distance from others. And a couple of the surveys that I've seen have shown that people will be confident to stay in hotels by August and September. So that's what we're banking on, is hoping that that will help to jumpstart Milwaukee's economy, along with the fact that, I said it a million times, I'm going to sound like a broken record. Everyone's probably heard me that at this point, the DNC is still planning on hosting their in-person with a virtual component live here in Milwaukee. And regardless of how much of it is here in person, we will have a presence. We have built a relationship with the DNCC. There will be a presence of Milwaukee, like Jeremy said, no matter what, that showcases that Milwaukee is a great place to host your convention, to live, to work, to play.
That's a great, listen, in our last 3 minutes here, really quickly, I got to ask this question because somebody pre-submitted it. This person wants to know, when is going to be the first drive-in concert? Does anybody know? Anybody got the deets on that? All right.
Yeah. A lot of them are happening in other cities right now. I've seen, so we haven't done one here yet. That's the sad thing about
it was private.
Yeah, I mean, the sad thing about it is that we're going to now be reliant on cars for a lot of this entertainment.
Yeah.
As someone that is trying to make it more about people and place and walkability and neighborhoods, it seems like that's going to take a flip. On one part, we have all these streets opening and active streets, which I believe is awesome. On the other part, our entertainment is going to have focused around the automobile. And if you don't have one, it'll be really tough to get to places and have that same experience, which creates a whole nother level of equity in these experiences.
I've seen people kind of like, the line to the bank, and there's like car, person, car, person just standing there. Yeah, this is a lot for us to think about. Mm-hmm. So listen, I'm sharing my Zoom account with the Hispanic Collaborative, and they're going to be on at 3:05. So I got 2 minutes.
Hi, Nancy.
Hey, Nancy. Email me and say, hey, you know what?
Hi, Nancy.
Nancy, we just got done talking about you. That was not planned. It could not have been better timing for you to show up. Awesome. Just like, I got to get off. So, okay, listen. So my panelists, give me a quick 20-second of everything that you've learned right now. If you had to keep something and take it into the new normal, what would it be? Kira, what would you keep from this experience into the new normal?
Balance. Trying to figure out a way to keep myself balanced. You guys can see my stupid creative room in the back. Just, have fun, play and work too.
Peggy, how about you?
Be kind. Everyone has different opinions about what's going on and how we can and how we can go forward. And it's never, ever about anything else but being kind to one another.
Samantha?
I would say self-care and mental health.
Good one. Jeremy?
I'd say the ability to reboot your personal life or your profession, reimagine what you could do and reinvent your companies and your experiences. That's what we've been working on right now.
Amazing. Thank
3
you.
hours.
You have been a great panel. This was a really good discussion. I am excited to leave here and go get my eyebrows arched for the first time in 2 months. Yes. Okay. Thanks to all the participants. I think we have about 400 people registered. They're all going to get the replay link. About 200 of them came with us. Nancy, thank you so much for sharing your Zoom time with me. Have a great webinar. Everybody else, have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.